Welcome back to All Lore Everything. Today we are delving back into some Dungeons and Dragons lore and the campaign setting of the Forgotten Realms. Since we're a new channel, your likes, comments, and subscriptions help out a great deal, so be sure to do all of that if you are liking the content we are putting out. As usual, there may be some spoilers in this lore video. In particular, this video spoils some details from Baldur's Gate 1 through 3, the Forgotten Realms Avatar series of novels, and the Descent into Avernus 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons adventure. What would you do to become a god? That is what three mortals asked one another sometime in the deep history of Forgotten Realms past. These mortals were companions in only the loosest sense. Bane was a powerful tyrant. Merkel was a peerless necromancer. Bal was an unrelenting assassin. Each were very good at their job, and each one were evil. They formed a pact of convenience and set their sights on godhood. If they could achieve it together, that would be great. But ultimately each one was out for themselves. Jurgal was an ancient deity in this time. He had a portfolio that surrounded the dominion of death and the dead. Jurgal was called Lord of the End of Everything. The three companions, Bane, Merkel, and Bal, decided that their end goal was to take this portfolio from Jurgal. This nearly impossible task started with quests that had them traveling all over the world of Faerun to complete it. It wasn't until they came upon one of the seven lost gods that their goal became achievable. The seven lost gods were a host of gods or primordials from the ancient history of the Forgotten Realms. Their past reaches far enough back that sages and historians are not completely sure of their full history or role. What is important is that they each had some divine power. When Bane, Merkel, and Bal came upon one of these deities, they were able to subdue them and steal their divine power for themselves. Now armed with a spark of divine power, the three mortals had ascended to a point where they could possibly challenge Jurgal himself. The three companions traveled to Jurgal's realm, the Grey Waste. There, Jurgal held court in the Castle of Bone. Jurgal had at his disposal a seemingly endless horde of undead minions. Everything from basic skeletons and zombies all the way up through powerful and intelligent liches attacked the three companions. Using their divine power and skill, they fended off the hordes and fought their way to the Throne of Bones. Jurgal sat on the throne, congratulated them on their success, and watched as they bickered over which of the three would get to take the throne from him. Bane believed that as a ruler and a tyrant, he was most fit to sit on the throne. Merkel believed his mastery over the powers of necromancy made him the most fitting ruler of the undead. Bal believed his skill at killing and murder made him the prime candidate for dominion over the realm of death. Getting nowhere and fueled by their divine sparks, Jurgal knew that the conflict between the three could become endless. Jurgal, for his part, was bored of his role commanding such a large portfolio. Jurgal essentially wanted to retire and train a successor, becoming their advisor. He agreed to give up his portfolio to one of the three companions after they participated in a contest. Since the fight would take an eternity, Jurgal offered another option. Jurgal presented the three companions with the rules to a strange game, Skull Bowling. As the game was being set up, another deity had arrived. This deity was Malor, the god of beasts, who controlled a very small portfolio. He resolved to ruin the game in an attempt to get involved in the contest himself. When the three companions bowled their skulls, Malor chased the skulls down to ruin their game. Again, conflict broke out between the three companions once they realized the game was ruined by another. Jurgal simply offered up another game that Malor could not ruin, called Knucklebones. Jurgal snapped off three of his fingers at different lengths, and had each of the companions choose one. Bane drew the longest finger, while everyone expected him to take up dominion over the dead. Bane was a true tyrant and an intelligent and practiced ruler. He understood that the most appealing aspect of Jurgal's portfolio was one that was not as tangible. He wished to be a true tyrant as a deity, and so he chose to have dominion over strife and hatred. Tyrants around the world would worship him and force their followers to as well, and whenever conflict begat hatred, he'd be who mortals called to for aid. Merkel drew the next longest finger. As a necromancer, Merkel was quite familiar with undeath, and so thought he was best suited to dominion over the dead. The horde of undeath that had slowed the companions' advance upon the Castle of Bone would be his to command, and he'd be in control of the afterlife of so many dead mortals. Finally, Bal, an assassin and murderer, fittingly became the god of the act of death and murder itself. Assassins would call his name as they slew their targets, and death and evil would go hand in hand as long as he reigned. Jurgal, meanwhile, became a much weaker deity, and an advisor to Merkel, helping him to usher in the souls of the dead. Worship of Jurgal nearly died out completely. It turned out that Bane had chosen his portfolio well. Dominion over hate and tyranny was a powerful force in Faerun. The Gentarum were Bane's hand on the material plane, and they were zealots that operated out of the Moon Sea region. Bane and evil were almost seen as synonymous, with his ability to sow hatred and fear across the world coming to a head in the 13th century. Nearly all followers of good came into conflict with Bane's pursuits throughout that century, and Bane himself became the most hated figure of non-evil being in the Forgotten Realms during that time. Merkel was not as polarizing or active as Bane, although he did not have a team of mortal zealots under his command. Merkel was the deity whom mortals prayed to at funerals. an unfair ruler of the domain of the dead. These prayers were like pleas to an uncaring king. Still, this steady stream of worship kept Merkel in a strong position throughout his reign. Finally, Baal worked tirelessly to gain more power. He was able to gain enough power to have both the goddess of pain and the goddess of poison serve him. Unlike Merkel, every untimely death, even those that went unmourned, brought him power. With such dominion over death, it was not strange when Baal was able to predict his own. Baal fathered Baalspawn, mortals that had a small part of Baal's own divine spark in them. This meant that if he were to truly meet his end as he predicted, there'd be a chance he could return. Bane and Merkel's desire for even greater power drove them to hatch a plot together to take the Tablets of Fate from Lord Io and use them to further their own ends. The tablets listed the name of every deity, and their assigned roles, and Bane and Merkel hoped to rewrite them. Not realizing that Io was leagues more powerful over a god than a god was over a mortal, this pursuit was hopeless. Io knew of the plot immediately but allowed it to go on so that he could punish the gods for what he felt was apathy and dereliction of their assigned duties. He decided to punish all of the gods by reducing them to weakened forms of their respective avatars. He then dispatched the tablets to the world of Toril and initiated both the time of troubles and the beginning of the era of upheaval. At the very least on a temporary basis, the rule of each of the three dark gods was brought to an end during this time period. This era saw magic being unreliable and gods working against each other in real time in forms that could potentially die. Suddenly, Baal's vision of his own death didn't seem impossible. After the appearance of Bane's avatar on Toril, he immediately launched the search for the Tablets of Fate by rounding up his clerics and the agents of the Gentarum. In this endeavor, he was assisted by his fellow erstwhile allies Mirkul and Baal, while the tyrant initially attacked the town of Shadowdale, which resulted in a fight between Elminster and Mr. He eventually discovered the location of one of these artifacts, which was guarded by the avatar of Torm in his temple in the city of Tantras. After making his appearance in West Farron, Merkel continued his journey to the Chauntean Temple of Goldenfields, which is located in the Sword Coast North. Merkel was defeated by a Chauntean high priest there, but not enough to keep him from discovering knowledge of the location of one of the tablets sometime after this battle. Merkel retrieved the tablet and transported it to his domain in the Great Waste of Hades. Merkel's clergy planned a mass-scale death spell as Gentle-Keep prepared to assault Tantras. His worshippers massacred dozens of Baal followers in a single moment after learning their true names. Meanwhile, Bane's priests completed the Stealing of Souls ceremony to harness the released life energy, which transferred Bane's essence from his avatar to the enormously armored Black Brother statue. The Black Lord's enormous aspect marched over the dragon reach towards Tantras to seize the Tablet of Fate. It was confronted by a titan-sized, lion-headed Torm, the god of courage and self-sacrifice. Torm was empowered by thousands of sacrificed lives from the city's devoted, who had willingly given up their life to have a part in Bane's defeat. As the two gods battled over the seaside city, chain lightning flashed from their huge blows and the earth shook as though the world was being torn apart. Bane and Torm destroyed one another, bringing about both of their deaths. Baal at this point realized he had been betrayed by his former companions as all of his assassins were killed by Merkel's ritual. He set out on his own and revealed the location of the tablet that Merkel had stolen to a group of adventurers. He later attacked these adventurers, but found himself dead at the hands of a man named Cyric, who used a weapon he later named Godsbane to do it. Godsbane was strong enough to kill a god because, unknown to Cyric or Baal, it was the avatar of the god Mask, who ruled, fittingly, over deception. Baal's prophecy of his own death came true. This same group of adventurers would also bring about Merkel's end in the city of Waterdeep. The mage Midnight managed to cast a disintegration spell successfully on Merkel, preventing him from recovering the Tablet of Fate. Ultimately, a combination of lust for power and betrayal led to the demise of each of the Dead Three. Following these events, the status quo changed. Celeber, an adventurer that helped foil the Dead Three's plots with the Tablets of Fate, was given Merkel's portfolio, ruling as a much fairer god of the dead. Cyric took over for both Bane and Baal, but was driven to madness. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 covers the story of many of the spawn that Baal had created in an attempt to be resurrected. While his resurrection was stopped then, he was resurrected as a mortal quasi-deity when the last two Baal spawn remaining killed one another. While he regained his power as god of murder, he was very weak compared to his previous form. Bane eventually was rebirthed by similar means. He had hid his essence inside his son, Vim. Vim served as a cocoon, from which Bane burst forth once more. Merkel hid his power inside an object called the Crown of Horns, but never truly burst forth back into his existence. Instead, a near-lifeless husk of Merkel floated among the astral plane, but was sentient enough to converse with passers-by. Eventually, a second sundering took place in the world of Toril, and this restored Merkel as a much weaker deity, this time serving alongside Jurgil to Celeber, the god that had replaced him. While it may seem like death and resurrection into quasi-deities might be the end for these characters, the truth is that there are signs that the writers of Forgotten Realms are not quite done with them yet. In the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Adventure Descent into Avernus, the introductory adventure has the player characters investigating strange activities in Baldur's Gate. Through this investigation, the players learn that a cult of the dead 3 exists in the city, worshipping Bane, Baal, and Merkel and looking to see them restored to power. Many believe this story may eventually link to Baldur's Gate 3. In the portion of Baldur's Gate 3 that has been released in early access, a Lick-like creature offers resurrection services to the party. Data mining has revealed that this character is actually Jurgle. Perhaps Jurgle sentenced to be on the material plane for his role in allowing the Dead 3 to rise to power. Do you think that the Dead 3 will play a role in the remainder of Baldur's Gate 3's story? Do you think Wizards of the Coast plans to bring these characters back in a more powerful form? Let us know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. For more lore about everything, please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment for what lore topic you want us to cover next. See you in the next video.